Hello, Wheel of Time community, and welcome to the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru. I'm Teresa.
And I'm Tim.
And together, we're going to walk through Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time book series. How you doing, Tim?
I'm doing okay.
Cool. Before we get started, we just want to remind you that this is a reread. We assume that you've read the entire series, so there will be spoilers. You have been warned. All right, Tim, what are we going to be doing in today's episode?
Today we'll be discussing chapters 30 and 31 of The Great Hunt, where the great game is being played left and right, and Ingtar finally gets to Cairhien. But is he too late?
Yes.
Chapter 30 is called... Broke me.
Sorry,
Okay.
Go ahead.
Chapter 30 is called Daes Dae'mar, and the icon is the rising sun of Cairhien.
Here's a quick summary to act as a reminder for those of you who are not reading along with us. Rand is trying again to talk to Huron about all the bowing and scraping and Lord Rand stuff. Huron isn't listening to a word, saying that the three of them have to show these Cairhien that they know what is good and proper just as well as they do. Rand is about to take him and shake him when they're interrupted by a knock at the door. The very excited innkeeper has come by to personally hand deliver 2 more invitations to Rand, who takes them without looking at them. These Cairhien games are getting to all of them. Huron examines the invites and tells Rand that one is from Lord Barthane's high seat of House Damodred, who is next to the king in power, and the other from King Galdrian himself. Rand wants to burn the invites as he has with all the others that have arrived since his first day. But Huron explains that burning them has only worked so far because the other houses have been waiting to see what powerful friends Rand has to offer such insults. But burning these 2 will make powerful enemies for sure. Rand, Loyal, and Huron try to figure out what to do that won't lead to Rand getting a knife in the back, but he's in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Finally, Rand decides to go down to the common room and let the letters be seen. He will not break the seals, so it's obvious that he has not made any decisions yet, which will hopefully buy him a few more days. He figures that Ingtar has to show up soon. Rand and Loyal head out to the guardhouse, trying to come up with a plan if Ingtar does not arrive in a few days. They don't have money for passage on a ship, and Fane and his dark friends wouldn't let them get as far as the docks anyway. Same problem if they try to ride out of the city. The Trollocs have them pretty well trapped. They reach the guardhouse, and Rand asked about Ingtar and Selene. The officer on duty pretends that he has no idea what Rand is talking about, even though Rand has asked the same question every day since he arrived. Rand spies Captain Caldovan and says maybe he can help, and the officer flat out lies and says that there is no one by that name there. Loyal can tell that Rand is about to start something and ushers him away. Rand pulls a Katniss Everdeen "thank you for your consideration" moment before stalking out. Rand is sick of the great game and sick of everyone thinking he is a lord. He starts to blame Moraine for all of his troubles, but then thinks better of it. Each step along the way made sense at the time, and now he couldn't see his way out of it. He tells Loyal that he longs for the simple life, and Loyal mentions Tavern, which sparks Rand off again. They walk along in silence until Loyal notices that there is a fire up ahead. Rand is immediately worried about Huron, who he left guarding the horn, and they run toward the inn. The closer they get, the more certain Rand is, until sure enough, they see the defender of the Dragon Wall up in flames. Loyal and Rand go charging into the burning inn to rescue Huron like a couple of big damn heroes. They scramble through the smoke and flames to Huron's room, where they find him sprawled on the floor with a huge lump on his head. The chest holding Matt's dagger and the horn of Valair is gone. Leaving his books to burn, Loyal grabs Huron and carries him out. Rand, remembering that Moraine said his life may depend on it one day, goes to his room to get the dragon banner. He manages to grab his saddlebags with the banner and the flute case Tom gave him before the ceiling comes crashing down. Soot-blackened, choking and gasping, Rand makes his way over to Loyal and Huron. A woman is wiping Huron's face, but he is obviously not okay. Rand asks for a wisdom or a healer, and the woman tells him that she is one, but there isn't anything she can do for Huron because his injuries are too bad. Rand hears someone call his name and turns to see Matt and Perrin and the others riding in. Ingtar has finally arrived. Rand felt a shiver run through him. "It's too late," he told them. "You came too late." And he sat down in the street and began to laugh.
We are really getting to the true lording of Rand in this chapter. Rand is frustrated that Huron is getting more and more formal with him, but there's nothing you can do about it at this point. Mm-hmm. It's way too late to go back.
Oh, yeah.
And I really feel bad for Huron. The guy is surrounded by people right now who basically are looking down on him for not being more proper with his lord. Huron is proud and doesn't want the Cairhien to think less of them for being outlanders. And while Rand seems like a good guy, I'm sure Huron has seen lords in his lifetime that would not think twice about sacrificing a pawn like Huron for some political game. That's definitely how things work here in Cairhien, and so part of him is upping his game because he's motivated by covering his butt in case Rand decides that he wants to treat him like the other Cairhien lords. And Rand is not taking this very well.
No, he's not. This chapter is so fun.
Yeah.
I would hate to be in Rand's shoes, but I love reading about him getting all twisted up in these games. And the arc that we see in this chapter is so great. Like, we start in such a comical place with Rand wanting to shake Huron for letting the Cairhien ways get to him.
Yeah.
And it's such a comedy of errors, like this whole thing. But by the end of the chapter, we're in like a really dark and dire place. It's so good.
Yeah, it really is. One thing this chapter does remind us of is the imminent danger Rand, Loyal, and Huron are in. Mm-hmm. Like, we come out of this encounter with the Trollocs in the streets, setting the Illuminator's chapter house on fire, and now they're basically barricaded in Loyal and Huron's room, ready to pull weapons on anyone who comes in. It's tense, because they really are trapped.
Oh, for sure. And I'm sure they're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, the Illuminators aren't even really admitting that there was a fire, but I'm sure they're thinking at some point someone's going to catch us and we're going to have to get in trouble for this, right?
Yeah, someone had to have
set
seen
the
us.
thing on fire. Like, we blew a hole in it. Like, someone's going to come for us.
We got to get out of town before we get found.
Yeah, exactly. So Rand's plan to deal with the invitations is a really good one. He's screwed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Because by burning all the previous invitations, he has insulted every noble house in Cairhien.
Yep.
The only reason they haven't moved against him is that they assume he has friends in high places. Refusing Barthanes and the king proves that he doesn't have anyone powerful to protect him. So it's open season on Outland Lords. And I mean, as Huron so helpfully points out, accepting the invitations is just as likely to get him a knife in the back as refusing.
Right.
So this stall tactic he comes up with is perfect. Moraine and Tom would be so proud of him for coming up with it.
Yeah, they would. Absolutely. Rand's experience at the guardhouse is like the worst customer service experience ever.
Right?
Like, these are people just being difficult for difficulty's sake. And Rand is done with all of this crap. He just stares at the man who lies to his face, about to lose it, to the point where Loyal has to put his hand on Rand's shoulder to get him out of there.
Yeah, I just see him like staring like fire into this guy's like, seriously, I'm just gonna stand here and stare you down until you tell me something helpful.
Yeah, maybe something in the back of my mind is like, I can channel the one power. You don't know this,
right?
The things I could do to you that I have no idea what to do, but if
That's
I could,
a good point. Like, yeah. I mean, I didn't actually think about that because Rand is so reticent to use the power, but there has to be some tiny part of him that's like, just a little bit. I'm going to kill you dead where you stand.
Yep. So Rand has basically had it with Cairhien. He's
right.
done.
Yeah. He's so done. So Rand starts to go to the default of blaming Moraine for all his trouble, like he does. But then he realizes that he can't hold her responsible for all this. And I like that he kind of walks it backwards in his head and thinks that there was always a new reason to keep pretending. Each step along the way made sense at the time until he couldn't see his way out of it because it's too late. And, that is true in a lot of situations, I mean, I think we all do the best that we can. And, we make the decisions that make sense at the time. And it's only in retrospect that we realize that's probably the wrong decision to make.
Yeah. And it shows some growth on Rand's part. Like, he's this whole like lording of Rand also is him starting to like have to take ownership of this is my decision now.
Yeah.
And these are my decisions. I'm not necessarily being a puppet.
Yeah. And I mean, he goes back and forth because he's still growing up.
Yeah.
But it is definitely a step in the right direction.
Loyal loses his books.
I know. Like when he says the books will have to burn, it's like, oh, this is huge.
It is. It really is. Like, is it wrong that my first thought was, and this is why we have e-readers these days,
Right?
right? Because you grab one thing and you're good to go. Mm-hmm. But in all seriousness, Loyal is amazing in this scene.
Oh, yeah.
Runs into a burning building, gets Huron out on his own, and just in the nick of time. He's just awesome.
Yeah. Rand and Loyal are both so impressive during the fire. This chapter is such a ride.
Yeah.
So much tension with worry over Huron, especially when he passes out and Rand is feeling for a pulse.
Yep.
And then when Loyal lets us know that the chest is gone, it's just such a well-written scene. And the ending is the perfect way to cap it off. All is lost. The horn is gone. The healer woman says that Huron's going to die.
Yep.
And right at the lowest point, that's when the one thing that Rand has been hoping for this whole time happens. Ingtar finally shows up, but it's too late.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, okay, now twist the knife the other way.
Yeah.
So good. And like, okay, I totally get why Rand reacts the way he does. We were just talking about this the other day, but I also respond with inappropriate laughter sometimes
Yes,
when I'm
do.
miserable. Like it happens a lot when I get hurt. I just start laughing or like laugh crying, you know?
Yeah.
That's just how my body responds to being overwhelmed, I think.
Yeah, like there's been times when you've broken something and that was your response. To just
Like laughter is like a precursor to tears.
Yeah.
Sort of like laugh crying, yeah. But I mean, it's not genuine laughter, you know, and Rand's laughter here is probably tinged with a note of hysteria, which is what makes Varen so nervous. But like, I get it. Like, I really love this chapter.
It's a good chapter. And that wraps up chapter 30. But before we get into chapter 31, here's a quick word from our sponsors.
For today's episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru, we would like to take a moment to recognize the loss of all of Loyal's books. While we stand by the decision to let the books burn in order to save Huron and commend Loyal for his bravery, it was nonetheless a tragedy. So to all of the books lost in the events of this chapter, we raise a glass and salute you.
Chapter 31 is called On the Scent, and the icon is still the rising sun of Cairhien.
Worried that Rand's mad laughter is a sign that he is not okay, Varen delves him for healing and then moves on to heal Huron. Mat asks Rand where he disappeared to and how they got to the city ahead of them. Rand stalls and asks how they found the inn. Perrin tells him that they had to give their names at the guardhouse, and when the officer heard Ingtar's name, his eyes nearly popped out of his head. He tried to say that he didn't recognize it, but it was an obvious lie. So Varen showed him her ring and whispered something in his ear. The boys aren't sure what she said, but the man was extremely helpful afterwards. Rand has to tell them that he had the dagger and the horn, but the Dark Friends took them. Mat is disappointed, but says that Perrin is a sniffer now too, so they should be able to find them again quickly. Rand looks at Perrin, sizing him up, wondering about him being a sniffer, and sees that Perrin is looking at him the same way. Rand hears him mutter the word Shadow Killer. Varen has Huron back on his feet, but tells him that he'll feel tired for a few hours as his body adjusts to the healing. By this point, the crowd that had been watching the burning inn is now paying a lot of attention to the group, and Rand suggests they move their conversation off the street. Varen directs them to an inn called the Great Tree, and on the way, Rand asks Huron how soon he'll be able to follow the trail of the Dark Friends again, and the probable route they will take. Rand tells Huron to take some time to rest up, and they can follow the trail when he feels fit. They can catch up if they ride hard. Rand suddenly stops when he realizes that everyone is staring at him. He apologizes to Ingtar, saying that he has gotten used to being in charge, but he does not intend to take Ingtar's place. Ingtar responds that Moraine and Agelmar were right to choose Rand as his second, and maybe it would have been better if Rand had been in charge from the beginning. They get to the Great Tree, and Rand has a bath. He is not happy that Varen is there, and he believes her to be Moraine's eyes and ears, trying to pull his strings from afar. His red coat is damaged from the fire, so he pulls out a black one that is just as ornate. He empties his pockets and finds both the invitations and the letters from Selene. He feels like a fool for chasing after her, since she is a noble and he is just a shepherd, and a man that can channel to boot. He burns the letters to put an end to foolish fancies. Varen has taken a private dining room so that they can all talk. Perrin is brooding, sure that Rand is Shadow Killer, and lamenting everything that has happened to change them. He's a blacksmith, hammers, not axes, so on and so forth. Rand comes in and asks about Huron. Ingtar tells him that Huron insisted on going out, so Ingtar told him to only follow the trail until he smelled Trollocs, and then they could follow the next day, unless Rand thinks it's better to follow them that night instead. Rand again tells Ingtar that he didn't mean to take over and isn't in command. Varen asks him very pointedly how he vanished from Ingtar's camp and how he got to Cairhien a week ahead of them. Everyone is staring at Rand, so Perrin cuts the tension with a joke and then says that perhaps he has more important things to talk about. Rand gives him a grateful smile, and for a moment, he is still the boy Perrin grew up with. Rand tells them about the portal stones in the mirror world, how Huron followed the trail the Dark Friends would be on, and about Selene. Matt asks if Selene brought him back, and Rand says that she must have. He tells them that when he and Loyal stole the horn in the night, they decided that they had to ride to Cairhien because he didn't think they could sneak by the Trollocs again, and knew Ingtar would catch up. Rand looks up at Perrin sharply, and he realizes he said the word Shadow Killer aloud without meaning to. He wants to tell Rand about the wolves, thinking it's only fair since he knows Rand can channel, but he can't talk about it with Varen there. Varen is very interested in Selene, but then the food arrives and the conversation is interrupted by dinner. Perrin finds it painful to watch Matt eat while looking so pale and drawn, shoveling food into his mouth like it was his last meal. Huron returns and tells them that he tracked the Dark Friends to Lord Barthane's manor. Matt suggests going to the king, but Varen says that Galdrian would never let the horn go if he ever got his hands on it. Varen says that she could possibly use her status as Aes Sedai to get invited to Barthane's manor in a few days. Huron pipes up that Rand already has invitations from Barthane's and the king, and Ingtar wants to know what the hell Rand has been up to in Cairhien. Rand protests that he didn't do anything. The invites just came. Huron explains about Rand burning all the previous invitations, and Varen says that sometimes the pattern supplies what is needed before the need is known. She tosses the king's invite into the fire and says that the other one will do fine. Rand protests, asking how can he go? He's a shepherd, not a lord. Neither Ingtar nor Huron believe him, and Perrin realizes that if he hadn't grown up with Rand, he wouldn't believe it either. Rand has grown into his fancy coats and has been talking to the Aes Sedai and Ingtar as an equal. Perrin tells him that he can do it, and Varen adds dryly that if he acts as arrogantly as he did when he was brought before the Amyrlin, then he'll be fine. One of the dates on the invitations is for the next night, and Ingtar throws a fit that it's too long to wait. He must have the horn. Huron speaks up to say that that isn't their way. What is meant to be will be, but they aren't supposed to talk about must. They start planning for the party, and Varen sees that the letter mentions that Rand took an interest in one of the king's projects and asks about it. Rand tells her about the statue from the Age of Legends that Galdrian is trying to unearth and move to the city. Varen does not approve, and Rand asks her what the statue is. Varen explains about the code and call, upsetting the room, but then says that they have bigger fish to fry. Rand tells her that they will get the dagger and the horn back, and then he is done. Varen gives him a small, mysterious smile, and Perrin is sure that Rand does not know half of what he thinks he does.
I like the description of the feeling when Varen heals Rand after the fire. Here's what the book says. He felt as if he had been doused with cold water. Not the wet, but the tingle. I mean, this communicates so much. It's such a complicated sensation in very few words.
Yeah.
There are a lot of tiny clues that Jordan leaves, letting us know that Varen is of the Black Aja. And the interaction with the man from the guardhouse is one of them. Mm-hmm. We don't exactly know what she says to him, but it scares him. It scares him a lot.
I really want to know what she said.
Yeah. But we don't know for certain what she did, and it's not 100% provable that she's black. This secret was probably the best one kept for the whole series, and rereading, you start seeing tiny moments where Jordan was just messing with us.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with that because Varen is such an awesome character.
Yeah. And I love that guy gets his comeuppance, though, you know?
Totally, yeah.
I mean, what can I say? The dark side version of me is probably a vengeance demon or something. But screw that guy.
And finally, Rand is back to the same person who cared for Matt for days on the road to Camelin, at least for a minute. Like, the first thing out of his mouth once he's caught his breath is how sorry he is that he lost the dagger. Not the horn, the dagger.
Yeah.
And Matt, for the first time in a while, does not throw it back in Rand's face. There may be hope for those kids yet.
Yeah, because it's true. I mean, Rand isn't on this trip for the horn or glory or greatness or any of that crap.
Nope.
The only reason he's on this trip is because Matt's going to die without the dagger and he has to help.
Yeah, that's all the reason he's here for.
Yeah. I wish Matt would remember that more often.
Seriously.
I like that Rand is still taking care of Huron.
Yeah.
Even though the horn has been stolen and they have to get it back, he still tells Huron to take time to rest and heal. His priorities are still where they should be, with his men.
Absolutely. The moment where Rand realizes that he's taken charge and that Ingtar should be the one giving the orders is kind of cool because I read it two ways. On one level, Rand has the humility to publicly admit that he took over and apologized to Ingtar. Ingtar turns and laughs it off, and they set off to get things done. On another level, Rand has naturally slipped into the leader role and does it very well. Ingtar may also be looking at Rand and realizing how fit he really is for this job, and at the same time realizing that if he were to be taken out of the picture, his men would be okay.
Right.
If he were gone, his men would be in good hands.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Which is, going to be pivotal later as he makes his arc.
I love how wrong Rand is when he thinks that Varen is Moraine's eyes and ears and Moraine's hands on him. Like,
Yeah.
It doesn't even occur to him yet that Varen has her own agenda and is playing her own schemes.
Every Aes Sedai's got one.
Moraine is the least of Rand's worries right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's so sure of himself too.
Yeah. And I just want to take a moment to admire Rand's black coat.
Okay.
Like, I cannot wait to see some of these costumes come to life on screen.
Yeah.
Like, here's what the book describes. Silver Heron stood on the high collar, and silver rapids ran down his sleeves. Water battered to froth against the jagged rocks. It's just a really cool description.
Yeah. I really can't wait till Matt starts wearing lace and prancing around in pink.
Yeah, right?
That's gonna be fun to see.
Not too much lace, just a bit
yeah,
more.
a respectable amount.
As Rand considers Selene/Lanfear's letters, I have to remind myself what it was like to read this for the very first time. Back when I did not know that this was Lanfear's way of manipulating him. Back before Rand had conquered multiple kingdoms and had much bigger things that he was concerned with. Back before we knew what his future life would look like. And back when I was in my early 20s and feeling like life was so hard and how it couldn't get any harder. Because if I don't reflect on those days, I just forget how much I connected with Rand the first time through on this. Is he a little emo and whiner here? Yes. But so was I at that age. Like,
Yes.
yes. Doesn't make me like him anymore, but it does put some perspective on his struggle and reminds me to cut him some slack every now and then.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's true. Like putting yourself kind of back into your mind frame when you were that age and before you grew old enough to understand how little you had to worry about back then.
Yes.
And I mean, in Rand's case, of course, he has the weight of the world on his shoulders. Legitimately.
Yes, he does.
And it's just going to keep getting worse for him. But
right now he's only looking after Huron and oil.
Right, yeah. He has no idea how bad it's going to be.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, yeah.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, he does deserve a little bit of credit. So did you catch this part about Selene's letters? Quote, abruptly, he tipped back the mantle of the lamp on the bedside table, lit it, and thrust the letters into the flame. Outside the inn, the wind picked up to a roar, leaking in through the shutters and fanning the flames to engulf the parchment. End quote. Is this just poetic prose, or did Lanfear enchant the parchment to track Rand or something? Like, we know that some objects can be enchanted with certain weaves, like Moraine's coins and, some other things throughout the series. So am I reading too much into this? Or by burning the letters, is Rand subverting some hold that Lanfear has on him?
That's a good question. When I read through this, Jordan doesn't usually put things like that in unless they mean something. But it absolutely could just be like a flowery or just a way of putting this more tension and more pressure on the scene, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that very well. I'm sorry. But the idea is, I think he wouldn't put this in here unless it was something specifically trying to point to something. So either he's trying to say that this isn't a monumental decision that he's just made to forget Selene, or maybe there is some kind of award that he just destroyed and there's some kind of magic going on here.
I mean, it is a little more hand wavy than usual for Jordan's rules of magic, but I don't know. I mean, it stuck out to me like this means something,
It does, yeah. Back to a Perrin POV. One thing about the Wheel of Time that I've gotten used to is the way we switch point of views. This is the first series I ever read that would switch mid-chapter. And now it's a really common thing. Like, I'm not going to try and say that Jordan started this trend. It's just an interesting storytelling change that I think, and could be wrong, started to take off in the 90s. These days, we kind of expect a story, especially a fantasy story, to be told from more than one perspective. This was not always the case.
Yeah, no, I totally agree because I don't read a lot of fantasy, I expect the story to have a consistent point of view. And I have noticed, especially with like YA these days, that multiple point of view and multiple perspective and things like that is really, really common. And so I don't really remember before I started reading The Wheel of Time that being a thing. But it's definitely a thing these days.
Well, and YA is like kind of a new thing.
Yeah.
Since before that, like it's only recently come in.
Yeah, like back in the 90s, YA wasn't necessarily that. It certainly wasn't as huge as it is now.
Right.
It was like adult or children's. Like YA wasn't
it kind of grew out later.
For.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I mean, it's good that they're narrowing the categories because obviously there's a huge difference between, children in middle grade and then like YA.
Right.
But anyway, the point we're trying to make is that, the perspective switch was a new thing for me when I started reading The Wheel of Time.
And I kind of like it.
Absolutely. Because these books are so long and there's so many of them. Can you imagine if we were stuck in Rand's head for the entire series?
I don't think I would.
Kill me now. Like, oh, no.
But at the same time, I think if I gotten stuck inside a parent's head, who I love, for the whole series, I think it would have been just as boring.
Absolutely. Yeah. Being able to go back and forth to who's relevant at the time really is helping. And just to get a break, because especially the boys can be really, really broody.
Yeah.
So being able to take a step away from our little emo boy parent or Rand's woe is me thing and like go spend time with the girls for a while.
Yep.
Or, one of the many characters that we come across. I do enjoy it.
Perrin's observation that we're all of us changing is filled with such sorrow. Like, he realizes that Rand is Shadow Killer, and he knows that there's no going back to who they used to be. I feel for him in these first couple of books. No control at all over what is going on. Everything is in flux. Nothing is like it used to be. Things kind of suck.
Yeah.
And it's hard to stay positive sometimes.
Yeah, especially for Perrin.
Yeah.
He definitely gives in to the broodier side of life. But yeah, I do feel bad for him. I love that Perrin makes his lame joke and diverts the attention off of Rand. He even holds Varen's eye for a minute, even if he looks away pretty quickly. It was just nice to see him have Rand's back and try to give him an out.
Yeah.
You know, like their friendship has been super tense throughout the whole book. So I liked this little bro moment, you know?
Yeah.
But kind of going back to what you were just saying, I also really love that he feels like he wants to tell Rand about the wolves.
Yeah.
I mean, freaking finally, right? I'm glad that he's starting to realize that the others might not get exactly what he's going through with the wolves, but Rand at least totally gets the feeling of wishing things didn't have to change so much.
Yep.
And the fear of what it all means, you know?
Yep.
It's like these stupid boys, if they just talk to each other, then they wouldn't have to go through all of this alone.
This is the Wheel of Time, though.
I know. Communication, not a skill that they have. But, you know, I don't think Perrin would be so broody if he would open up.
True, very true. Because
Like,
you'd have someone to confide in.
This doesn't have to be this hard. I mean, it's going to be hard. These changes are legit and the struggle is real. But it doesn't have to be that hard because feeling like you're completely alone, feeling like you have no support system makes things 10 times harder than they have to be.
Yeah.
And they have support. Like, yes, their friendship is struggling in this book, but they've been friends their entire lives. They are going to figure this out.
Yes.
And they could do it together. It's just they refuse to because they're stupid boys.
Yeah, and especially on the parents' side, like he's very much this is a burden I have to bear myself kind of guy.
Yeah.
And
well, so is Rand. I think the only one who isn't. No, I don't think Matt is. Do you think Matt is?
I think Matt chooses to bear his burden in a different way, but he still thinks it's his burden to bear. Like, but
maybe I guess I wouldn't frame it that way. But I think the end result is the same. I think Matt is more, if I just ignore it, it'll go away. If I never talk about it and never bring it up and just don't think about it, then I can pretend this isn't happening.
That's true.
You know?
That's true.
But whereas Rand and Perrin, they try to deny it at first, but eventually they're like, okay, I can't escape this. And now I will have this mountain on my shoulder and I will trudge along all by myself, you know?
Something about a mountain and a feather, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, both Rand and Perrin are like, this is my cross to bear and only I can carry it, you know?
Yeah.
But I personally don't see Matt that way.
I think you're right. I think it was a little off there.
And I think with Matt, especially once he hooks back up with Tom, like I think he does find like a genuine support system with, you know, Tom, and then when he's with Ptolemies.
Yes, especially when he gets there.
Oddly enough, I think that that Matt is the best at kind of relying on the people around him. Even though he's the first to ditch whenever there's a problem. It's like, God, Matt, come on.
Okay, fine then. If I have to do this, let's do it this way. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Stupid boys. So we get this quote. There are dark friends among the high as well as the low, Varen said smoothly. The mighty give their souls to the shadow as often as the weak. Ingtar scowled as if he did not want to think about that. Yeah, I bet you don't, dude.
Yeah. Boy. The moment Rand reveals that he has an invitation to Barthane's Manor is priceless. Like, everyone else is 100% sure that they'll have to be all sneaky and work to get in. Like, Ingtar's planning an assault. Varen is planning to try to get help from the king, and both are starting to look at all the obstacles to their plans to get through. And Rand is all like, I got this letter.
Yeah, and I love that when the invites first start showing up, they're a big joke. And Rand burns them, and it's all fun and games. But here, Varen remarks how the Wheel of Time weaves us all into the pattern as it wills. But sometimes it provides what we need before we know we need it.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, all those fun and games take on new meaning.
Yes.
Well done, Jordan. I tip my cap to you. So I think it's really important that Huron calls Ingtar out on his talk about how he must get the horn. All this time, he's been bowing and scraping to Rand because he's supposedly a lord. But Ingtar is also a lord, and he knew Ingtar first.
Yes.
But at this point, I mean, I don't think that he would stand up to Rand in the way that he does to Ingtar here. It shows his dedication to Rand in particular.
Yeah.
I think their time in the Portal world really cemented Huron's loyalties to Rand. Like, he put his entire hope of life and salvation into Rand.
Yep.
And so now, like, he is Rand's man through and through. But so, I mean, you know, we laugh at him and all of his, like, formality and all the bowing and scraping and everything. But it's not that, you know, Huron doesn't have a backbone. And it's not that Huron is turning into one of these, like, sniveling Cairhien people.
Right.
You know, because he stands up to Ingtar. He's like, this is not right. Like, I am a person of values, and I recognize that this is not our way. This is not right. You know, even though Ingtar is a lord.
Right. And it takes a little bit of gusto to stand up to a lord.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
That. Yeah.
Especially, like you were saying at the beginning of the episode, surrounded by all these people in Cairhien and their crazy ways. You know, like, Ingtar is very aware of his place in the hierarchy.
Yes.
At this particular moment. But even so, he's still going to say, this isn't right, you know, because he's a person of principle. But, you know, so it's interesting to see in light of his behavior towards Rand that what this really is saying is that he's just 100% loyal to Rand.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, you know? Like, I mean, in essence, Huron's the first of Rand's followers.
Basically, yeah, that's what you're saying.
I love Huron.
And I never thought of it that way before.
Me neither,
That's
actually
really cool.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure Ingtar's been a good person to be under.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure Ingtar isn't.
And I mean, Huron's not like a manservant, you know?
Right.
He, I mean, he respects Ingtar as a lord, and of course he respects Egilmar.
Right.
But, like, he's not a servant.
Right. So he has a little more ability to step out and, like, say, this is what we do here.
Yeah.
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 The way Viren just kind of shrugs off we need to make sure that this really powerful statue never falls into the hands of some crazy channeler is funny. Like, everyone is freaking out. And her response is basically, anyone who tries will burn themselves out to a crisp, except the Dragon Reborn. And if he's here, we got bigger fish to fry, so no worries. I love her. Yeah,
Definitely. And she also, you know, kind of gives us a hint about future events when she's talking about what woman would work with a male channeler anyway, you know?
Right.
And she talks about the few Aes Sedai who would be powered enough to wield it, and then, you know, 3 who are still in training, maybe.
Right, maybe.
You know?
But it's like, oh yeah.
But, I mean, I think that was a really important thing to say, because even if Rand wasn't paying that much attention, you know, it kind of seeded into his brain to then be pulled out much, much later when he can actually use it, you know?
Yeah. No, you're right, because that is a very important thing that gets planted right here. Yeah. The chapter ends with Perrin thinking, he did not think Rand knew half of what he thought he did. Not half. This is book 2. Perrin could not be more right.
Yeah, none of them know even a portion of what they think they do.
Nope.
Like, oh, guys, you've got so much to learn.
Oy. That ends chapters 30 and 31 of The Great Hunt.
Good chapters. I am really excited that we had a good episode with good chapters.
Me too. It's been fun. Join us next week for chapters 32 and 33, where big plans and crazy schemes are afoot at Barthane's party.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru.
We'll see you again next week. Make sure that you rate and subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. If you could leave us a positive review, it would really help us out. It makes us more visible so that people can find us. You can tweet us at Pod-Thru or email us at whatpodthru@gmail.com and let us know your thoughts on anything we covered today.
That's WOTPODTHRU@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody, and we hope the wheel weaves you in our direction again soon. That says, is he a little elbow?
Wow. Wow. Oh, God. I didn't even...
Is he a little elbow?
Yes, I may be dyslexic. Yeah. Emo, Elmo, whatever.
That's hilarious. I did not see that. I'm so sorry for interrupting you, but I just died.
Oh. Wow.